to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today I'm going to be checking out what Storygraph recommends that I read. So, if you are not familiar with the Storygraph, it is both an online book app as well as one that you can get on your phone. I always use the desktop version because I have an older phone and I just don't have room for that. Here on my screen now, you can see this is what the online page looks like when you log in, and it's basically sort of an alternative to Goodreads. Um, my Goodreads account, I do have one, but it is a hot mess, and I can't figure out how to make it not one without completely deleting the account, and I just can't be bothered. And I actually like the way that Storygraph looks better. Anyway, Storygraph has multiple ways of recommending books to you, and this is in no way sponsored by them. This is literally just me figuring out a different way to select books. But anyway, whenever I enter my page, every single time I refresh this page, it gives me four different books. I guess it's just a random selection of books from my to read pile, as it says. In addition to those books, I can also explore books that they just recommend me, and these are usually books that are not on my to be read pile. Today, however, I have planned two different things. One, I am going to choose one book from this to read pile, and then I am also going to explore the story graph suggestions section, and I will show that screen when we get to it. For now, here are the four different books that they are recommending or suggesting or whatever from my to be read pile right now. And I can tell you just from glancing at this, I already know which one I'm going to go with. So let me talk about the ones that I'm not going to choose. So I will not choose Widowland. That is not a book that I currently own. And right now, because these are the last few weeks that I have the books that are on my bookshelf, I am trying to prioritize those. There is also The Dream of the Red Chamber and Chavinger. And I will not be choosing those two books because they are both longer, and I already have a gajillion books that I'm in the midst of. And so I don't want to add yet one more chunky tome. Though those all three of those are books that I would like to get to at some point. So that leaves me with How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. This is a book that I have known about for quite a long while. Here's a sort of bigger picture of what this book is about, including this wonderful sort of AI powered, as they have it, Storygraph preview. I actually really like this section. They do, if you scroll down, have an actual description of the book that usually matches pretty closely what you find on the back of the book. However, the Storygraph preview I like because it is a preview of the book that kind of matches it to what type of reader they think would like this book. And I have found they typically give zero spoilers. In fact, it's not even usually a plot summary. It's usually more a summary of the types of themes you will find in the book. So if I want to know nothing about the book, I will read this preview. And I tend to like to know nothing about a book before I read it. Anyway, so yeah, How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, to read the preview in short. It is a gripping and emotional journey that will resonate with readers who appreciate complex, character driven stories that explore intricate relationships between mothers and daughters and the darker aspects of human nature. And you can always take a screenshot and read the rest of that if you want. But that sounds pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I am going to click over here, add to up next. And that is a section on Storygraph that will just collect all the books that I say I want to read next. So I will start there. And you can see that in this section called Up Next is now How the One Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. And what I am going to do now is I'm going to click this button over here that says Suggestions. And when I do that, Storygraph will generate for me a list of books that it suggests I try. And ooh, I like what they're starting with. And it's really fun. This is just based on a whole bunch of different stats, I guess, that they can collect from my account. And so the first suggestion that they have that is for a book that I should read next is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This has been on my TBR list for a long time. And they are suggesting this to me because it is similar, apparently, to something that I just read. Everything that I have heard about Station 11 makes me think it is a book that I'm absolutely going to love. I do not own this book, however. I don't know why I don't own this book. I can get it from my library, but I'm trying to stick to books that I own, so let me keep moving, even though it hurts to do so. This is a book that they say they've picked from my Storygraph recommendations. Um, this is one that they have picked from books that are recommended to me, but I believe it's also on my TBR. I don't recall exactly what this book is about, but it's by an author that I've really enjoyed in the past, Alexander Dumas. And I want to say it has something to do with the struggle that women had during a certain time period for power. But I could be really wrong on that. I'd have to click on the book to find out, but I'm not going to because I also don't own this book. Okay, I do own this book, The Red and the Black by Stendhal. This is a random pick, which is nice because if you ever want something or someone to pick a random book for you, well, here it is. So I am going to add that. Yeah, this is the random pick. Interesting. Kind of long. Very skeptical about whether that's going to work out this week. Oh, not so skeptical about this one. The Rain Heron by Robbie Arnott. They are recommending it because this is the book that's been on my TBR the longest. Yes, it has Storygraph, you know. Thanks for calling me out. And why not give it a try? Yeah, why not? Why not Storygraph? I've really wanted to read this book. It has been on my TBR wish list for forever, pretty much since I started my Storygraph account. However, I only just recently purchased the book. So thank you, Storygraph, for keeping track of that for me. Okay, can you forgive her? This would fit a prompt off of my Randomize-ish Your TBR 2024, which is a reading challenge that I'm doing on Storygraph. I do have this. It's book number 1 in the Palliser series. I'll add that to up next, but I don't know that I'm ready to start a series, and it is not a short book. They also recommend The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. And I picked this book up because I kept hearing a lot about it. Storygraph is recommending it because it matches the moods and pace in my reader profile. So that is tempting. I can be moody in my reading. So, interesting. Another choice is Wilkie Collins' Man and Wife. I have previously enjoyed this author's work, Storygraph, so I feel like it is a good guess that I will like this, though a lot of people I know who have read this say it's not one of their favorites of his, and I also don't own it, so that's not an option. Ooh, okay. Recommending Station 11 twice. Is this a sign? A user with a taste similar to mine has enjoyed this book. This might be the next book that I have to buy. This has also been on my TBR wish list for a very long time. I was enjoying this series. I did enjoy this series. So, A Dark Queen Rises. This is book 2 in the Burnt Empire saga by Ashok K. Banker. I did enjoy the first book. How about picking up where I left off? Well, I don't own the book Storygraph, and I'm not a big series person, so that's a no. This edition of The Secret History by Donna Tartt has been shelved the most on Storygraph. Why not see if the hype is real? Oh, it's a hyped book, particularly in this edition. I can see why. I do feel like this is the iconic edition of The Secret History. In fact, this book is so hyped, both me and my son own this edition of this book. Not intentionally. Neither of us realized that was the case. Um, okay, interesting. Now I would add this to my up next, but they do, as you can see by the red thing, there is a limit of 5 books that you can add to up next. I don't know why they limit it. Maybe they're trying to tell me, like, stop, Nicole. Start reading a book. Stop adding books. But I will pull this down off my shelf because I do own it. And then finally, the inverse of The Secret History is The Ambassadors by Henry James. And this one says, prefer to do your own thing. This edition on your to be read pile has been shelved the least by other users. So, kind of maybe an underrated book? I don't know. We will see. All right, this is very interesting. Let me go collect all these books and let's see what my thoughts are. Okay, so let's quickly go through the books that Storygraph suggested for me, and I'll give you some idea of what I think I might actually get to this week or this month. So, first, I mentioned How the One Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. I won't go over again what this book is about since I did a semi good job with the help of Storygraph describing that at the beginning. And this isn't too long a book. I have the feeling it will read rather fast. So I might get to this. My only hesitation would be is that this was a book that I've considered using for my family book club. So I don't know if I want to read it now on my own. That's basically what that's coming down to. The next book that it gave was it suggested The Red and the Black by Stendhal. I do tend to like satires on society. Tempting, tempting. And I love a good Barnes and Noble's classic edition. I love the font and stuff and the size that they use. But this is a really long book, and I've got a lot that I'm currently in the middle of reading, which was not what I was thinking was going to happen going into this week. So I do feel like I need some shorter reads if I plan on getting to them this week. However, all these books will stay on my TBR list for the rest of the month. So there's a chance that after this week I might get to this. The next book it recommended was The Rain Heron, and it mentioned that this was the book that's been on my TBR list the longest. That is true, which for me is like a huge reason to finally like take the time and get to it. So, and it's not particularly long. It's 269 pages, so that's really tempting. So, I think this is probably going to be the one that I'm most likely to get to if I can clear like some of the thousands of other books that I'm currently in the middle of reading. But who knows? I might just like take a day or two or three and just throw this in there and read it anyway. All right. It also recommended Anthony Trollope's Can You Forgive Her? And yeah, this is the first of six novels in the Palliser series. I have heard a lot of people like this series even better than the Barsetshire series. However, I am on book two in the Barsetshire series. I haven't even started book two. So I really don't want to start a different series by Anthony Trollope in the middle of the other series. So this seems unlikely to happen. I also got recommended The Lincoln Highway. I have not read anything by Amor Towles. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And this is about an 18-year-old Emmett Watson who is driven home to Nebraska by the warden of his juvenile work farm, where he has served 15 months for involuntary manslaughter. And then I know there's a train and some travel involved. I don't want to read too much, but there's a lot of things about the premise of this book that really do intrigue me, and so the fact that Storygraph has also told me that the mood and pacing of this book is one that lines up with what I tend to like, makes it super tempting. But this is also a bit of a longer read. Um, it's almost 600 pages. But if it really is in a mood and pacing that I like, I feel like it'll feel faster than that to me and maybe even read faster than that. Oh, this is tempting. And then I have the super hyped book, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, as much as this is shelved on Storygraph and in some ways is hyped, I also feel like there's quite a few people who don't like this book or and also don't like Donna Tartt. This is supposed to be a dark academia. I think a lot of people consider this like one of the first true dark academia books. I don't know if that's true or not, but um yeah, I feel like that's what this book is known for either way. I don't know if I'm in the mood for that. And this is also another like mid-length book. It's about 500 pages. The font is small. I feel like there's a lot of themes and stuff. I definitely notice that when people annotate this book, they have a lot of annotations on the book. And that's definitely not going to work for this week. So, oh, there's like a mosquito flying around here. So I'll have to see, but I doubt that's going to be picked this week. And then the final one is The Ambassadors by Henry James. I'm going to tell you right now that this is not the book that I'm going to pick for this week, and actually not because it's the least shelved book. But more because I know my final week this week is to read books that are the least shelved for the week. So I'm just going to hold this and wait for that. But it's interesting that Storygraph is encouraging me to like read some of the unicorns that I own. So let me bump us back here and show you the whole pile of selections or pile of suggestions. So here we go. New week, new TBR. These are all the books that Storygraph is suggesting that I read. And it's a really eclectic and interesting mix. You know, I have classics, I have some literary fiction, and yeah, these are all books that I feel like I've really wanted to read and just haven't picked up for one reason or another, and may not pick up this week for one reason or another. But there's definitely at least two on here that I really, really want to try and get to, especially this one. So we'll see. But I think Storygraph actually did a really good job. Like, if these were the only books that I had to read this month, I feel like I'd be pretty happy with this stack. So if you're on Storygraph, you might want to give this a try sometime if you're stuck for what to read next. And if you're not on Storygraph, what are you doing? I don't know. You enjoy whatever platform you are on. Anyway, like I said, this is not sponsored by Storygraph, but I think it's a great site and I'm happy to support them in any way. And I did this just because I thought it was a fun new feature that they added and I wanted to try creating a TBR list out of that. So this is my stack. Like and subscribe and follow along, and you'll find out next week, well, not even next week. You'll find out in a few days on Saturday whether I read any of these books.